For years, audiences followed the lives of the Owens, watching them build a life and raise a family on their remote farm in Yorkshire. But when their show suddenly disappeared and the family went quiet, curiosity began to grow. Now, after 3 long years, Raven Owen has finally spoken out, revealing the truth behind her parents' divorce, what really happened behind the stone walls of their iconic farm, and why Amanda and Clive's seemingly perfect marriage came to an unexpected end. The silence that settled over the valley following the abrupt cancellation of our Yorkshire farm by Channel 5 sent shockwaves through fans. Loyal viewers who had been captivated by the Owen family's journey on Raven's Seat Farm were left puzzled, disappointed, and without any closure. There was no emotional send-off, no final episode to tie everything together, just the quiet disappearance of a show that had become a part of so many lives. The network, known for its dramatic goodbyes and celebratory finales, moved on with only a vague mention of possible future Owen family projects. But there was no clarity, no real explanation about what had happened. The show's end didn't just signal the conclusion of a beloved TV program, it felt like the sudden vanishing of a family that had once welcomed the world into their everyday life. The Owens had always represented the charm and simplicity of country living, thriving in the rolling hills of North Yorkshire with their flock of sheep, loyal dogs, and bustling household of children. Their story was more than a show, it was a comforting glimpse into a more grounded way of life. The sudden halt felt like more than just the loss of a TV series, it was the unraveling of a family that had shared their world so openly. But beneath the surface, a more complex and personal struggle was quietly unfolding. The Owens, once viewed as the epitome of rural harmony, were dealing with challenges no longer shown on camera. Rumors began to emerge, soft murmurs about Amanda and Clive's relationship. Once seen as the ultimate countryside couple, their separation was kept quiet, a sharp contrast to the transparency they'd offered viewers over the years. Even though the cameras had stopped filming, the cracks in their relationship had already begun to appear. The once lively farm, filled with children's laughter and scenes of daily life, had fallen into silence, a quiet symbol of the struggles that lay hidden beneath the surface. This wasn't just another show being cancelled. It marked a turning point in the life of a family, and people were left wondering what had truly happened behind closed doors. To those who watched our Yorkshire farm, Amanda and Clive weren't just TV figures. They stood for resilience, sincerity, and the heart of British country life. For years, they had shared their world with viewers, raising 9 children in a rugged, isolated part of England. They seemed like the perfect rural couple, hardworking, humble, and deeply committed to their children, their land, and each other. Their life was anything but simple. From long days spent shepherding sheep to battling harsh Yorkshire weather, their world was filled with physical and emotional demands. Amanda, tall and striking, quickly became the face of the show. Her wit, energy, and warmth lit up the screen, offering a glimpse of a dream life to many watching at home. Clive, in contrast, was quiet, less comfortable in the spotlight, more grounded in the daily labor that farm life required. While Amanda's vibrant personality drew in the viewers, Clive's steady presence balanced their dynamic. He preferred to stay in the background, focusing on the demanding, often unseen side of running a farm. But over time, that balance began to strain under pressure. The expectations of fame, combined with the non-stop responsibilities of raising a large family and managing a working farm, started to wear them down. The same cameras that once captured their authentic life also began to expose the weight of living constantly under public scrutiny. Even though their children were largely kept out of the limelight, they were part of a story that started to feel fragile, an image of rural peace that was growing harder to maintain under constant attention. Yet the greatest strain wasn't just from being in the public eye. Behind the scenes, Amanda and Clive were drifting apart emotionally. The very things that made their story so compelling, the challenges, the love, the authenticity, were also the things that eventually created distance between them. The strain in her parents' marriage had started to show, and it was Raven, their eldest daughter, who felt the impact most deeply. As the oldest child, Raven had always been in the spotlight, whether she wanted it or not. But as the family's situation changed, so did her role. No longer just the dependable big sister, she found herself navigating the uncertainties of adolescence amid a family going through emotional upheaval. Raven suddenly found herself at the center of a growing mystery. Why had her once warm and open family grown so silent? What had really happened behind the scenes of our Yorkshire farm? And why did it seem like the very fame they had once embraced was now pulling the Owen family apart? After 3 years of silence, Raven Owen was ready to speak, and finally revealed why her mother had divorced Clive Owen. At just 12 years old, Raven was quietly thrust into the public eye when our Yorkshire farm began filming. She wasn't just a child growing up on a remote farm, she became part of a family under constant observation by millions. While the cameras documented every moment of her parents' seemingly picture-perfect life at Raven Seat Farm, Raven, the eldest of 9, remained a quiet observer. To outsiders, the family appeared to be the embodiment of rural charm and harmony. But Raven could see the cracks that the cameras missed. She saw her mother Amanda, the confident and charismatic shepherdess, struggling behind the scenes to keep everything together. She saw her father Clive, whose deep love for his children was evident, beginning to break under the burden of years of stress and fatigue. Growing up in front of the lens forced Raven to mature quickly. As the eldest, she naturally assumed the role of protector, doing her best to shield her younger siblings from the mounting pressures of life in the spotlight. She channeled her energy into her education, pursuing veterinary science, an expression of her love for animals and the farm. Working late nights and balancing responsibilities, Raven became used to sacrifice and quiet strength. As rumors and speculation about her family's troubles circulated online, Raven remained composed. She protected her siblings from the noise, stayed silent as headlines came and went, and waited as the world moved on once the cameras were gone. Her silence wasn't due to fear or denial, it came from a place of deep hurt. The truth was still too heavy to carry out loud. The girl who had watched her parents' relationship unravel wasn't ready to share her perspective. Not yet. And when filming stopped, life at Raven Seat Farm didn't go back to how it had been. While the routines remained, the early mornings, the biting cold, the animals needing care, the family was no longer intact. After years of shouldering the strain of a marriage lived on camera, Amanda moved out, leaving Clive with the younger children. What had seemed like a straightforward separation was anything but. It marked the end of a carefully constructed image, the closing of a chapter that had been broadcast to the world. At first, their split appeared calm and pragmatic. The show had ended, the spotlight dimmed, and they each retreated into separate lives. But without cameras shaping the narrative, the hidden fractures became more visible. The polished image of perfect rural life began to fall apart. Speculation spread quickly. Online discussions exploded with theories. Was it fame that drove them apart? Did the constant pressure of public life take its toll? Was there someone else? Or had they simply grown too tired to continue? Amanda and Clive never offered explanations. They chose silence over spectacle. Raven, too, kept quiet for years. She watched everything unfold from the background, aware of the truth but not yet ready to share it. The wounds were too fresh, and the pain too real. During that time, her presence on social media was thoughtful and measured. She posted about her life, her academic journey, her personal wins, her health, but kept family matters out of view. Carefully chosen photos, occasional family moments, and professional milestones offered glimpses without revealing the full story. Every now and then, but only in fragments, never too close, never too revealing, Amanda Owen, Raven's mother, stepped into the spotlight. She had become a sought-after speaker and a popular Instagram influencer. Clive, in contrast, remained grounded in his new life with Ruben, staying busy with their spin-off series. Meanwhile, Raven stayed mostly in the background, letting the family's public journey unfold without her, quietly watching from behind the scenes. Despite her silence, Raven's followers stayed loyal. They waited patiently, hoping she would one day share her own story. Many had been with her since the early days of our Yorkshire farm, emotionally invested in the family's ups and downs. Occasionally, she would post a morning walk, a healthy meal, a graduation or a work update, but between those images, there was a noticeable emptiness. people began to wonder what she was really feeling. What was happening behind the curated photos? What had truly gone on within the family she once called home? Her carefully worded captions kept the truth at a distance, but they couldn't stop people from wondering. Those who had once admired her family continued to look, hoping for answers. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. Raven posted a story. It was just a black background with simple white text, "It's time to tell everything." No tags, no hashtags, no clues. There was no dramatic title, no attention-grabbing headline, no tease for a coming reveal. It wasn't about causing a scandal. It wasn't clickbait or a cry for attention. It was a statement, plain, powerful, and deeply personal. Maybe even a confession. But more than that, it was a release. After years of quiet, Raven had finally found her moment. She wasn't angry. She wasn't trying to stir up drama. This was simply her truth, and now she was ready to share it, on her own terms. It wasn't the beginning of a feud or a breakdown of her life into tabloid headlines. It was the beginning of something quieter and more profound, healing. The silence that had surrounded her for years was gone. In its place, one powerful message remained: it's time to tell everything. Raven Owen was ready to speak, and the world was listening. Raven's story was never one of public explosions or headline-making drama. Instead, it unfolded as a quiet tragedy. And that, in many ways, made it harder to understand. There were no affairs, no accusations, no flashing blue lights in the peaceful Yorkshire hills. The unraveling of her parents' relationship happened slowly, silently. Amanda had always seemed like the glue holding everything together. On screen, she was the shepherdess, the mother, the heart of the family. But Raven remembered a woman who felt stuck. Amanda had become a symbol of public expectations, constantly present, constantly giving. Behind closed doors, she felt like she had disappeared. The pressure of being both a mother and a public figure weighed heavily on her. Years of holding the family together had taken their toll. Her strength had come at a personal cost. Clive, by contrast, was anchored in the old ways. He was quiet, steady, the one who preferred the solitude of farm life over the chaos of public attention. Fame didn't appeal to him. He held tightly to the simpler life that came before cameras and audiences. He wasn't resentful. His resistance came from a need to protect the world he knew. But the difference in how they each handled the spotlight eventually created a rift. In their quiet home, the tension grew, not through loud fights, but through a fading connection. Their marriage slowly unraveled, not with drama, but through the absence of affection. They stopped talking as much. They stopped seeing each other the way they once did. There was no single breaking point. Just a slow realization that things had changed. Raven saw it all. She saw Amanda become more withdrawn, more thoughtful, weighed down by things left unsaid. The vibrant, driven woman she once knew began to fade into the background of her own life. Clive, though still physically present, seemed lost in his own quiet frustration. Raven watched this slow shift unfold with sadness. She didn't know how to help, how to fix what was quietly falling apart. When Amanda finally decided to leave, it wasn't an act of anger or betrayal. It wasn't about anyone else. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. Amanda needed air. She needed space to breathe. After giving so much of herself to others, for so long, she had lost track of who she was. Amanda and the woman Raven was becoming, through everything, Raven came to see that the woman behind the camera, her mother, was more than just a figure shaped by others' perceptions. She was her own person, trying to navigate the complex, beautiful, and sometimes painful path of life like anyone else. For the first time in what felt like forever, Amanda was beginning to rediscover herself. Clive Owen was never one to express himself with words. He didn't stand in front of cameras or pour his heart out in interviews. In a world driven by self-promotion and public storytelling, Clive remained a quiet, reserved figure, keeping his life away from public scrutiny. Even as his marriage with Amanda unraveled and people speculated from the sidelines, Clive chose silence over explanation. Yet, In Raven's quiet reflections, we caught a glimpse of what that silence really meant. It wasn't detachment or indifference, it was sorrow. Deep, unspoken sorrow. Through her eyes, we saw a man burdened by grief he never knew how to express. Clive hadn't stopped caring. He wasn't cold. What he carried was the silent weight of a love lost, a grief that hadn't been named, but had lived in him all the same. He missed Amanda. He missed the life they had built together on the farm, the shared purpose that had once connected them. But he didn't have the words to express that longing. He couldn't bring himself to break the silence that had grown between them. Instead, Clive turned to what he knew, being a father. His bond with Reuben, his steady presence on the farm, deepened in Amanda's absence. Reuben became his constant, his partner in the stillness that followed. Together, they kept the farm going, working side by side. But even with that closeness, a quiet distance remained between Clive and Raven. It wasn't caused by anger. There was no bitterness, just space. The kind of space grief leaves behind, wide and lonely, like both an ocean and a desert. In his grief, Clive had pulled inward. He couldn't go back and undo the past. He couldn't mend what had already come apart. And in all that silence, there was no judgment, no blame, just a pain too raw to speak aloud, too deep to describe. Raven didn't see a man running from his emotions, she saw someone overwhelmed by them, consumed by feelings he didn't know how to release. When Raven chose to speak out, it wasn't to shame anyone, make noise, or stir controversy. Her choice came from a deep need to heal. She needed to release the years of unspoken pain that had quietly worn her down. Her words weren't meant to confront, they were meant to bring peace. She wasn't looking for attention. She was looking for relief, for clarity. The weight of guilt, the tangled memories, and the misunderstandings that had built up over time, she needed to let them go. By sharing her truth, Raven did more than open up about her own pain. She brought light to a situation long clouded by silence. The love story between Amanda and Clive hadn't ended with fireworks, it had slowly faded, worn down by unmet needs and words left unsaid. It was a relationship that dissolved not in anger, but in quiet, gradual loss. In telling her story, Raven gave Amanda and Clive something they hadn't been able to give themselves, clarity. She didn't just find healing for herself. She helped them begin their own process of understanding, opening a door they hadn't realized was still there. By stripping away the carefully crafted stories they'd all told for years, Raven didn't offer forgiveness, she offered truth. And in the end, that was what they all needed most. What truths have you been quietly holding onto, waiting for the right moment to let them out? Feel free to share in the comments. Thanks for spending this time with us. We'll see you in the next video.